Good morning. Good morning and welcome to the Ventura Center for Spiritual Living. I'm Reverend Bonnie Rose. It's great to see you here today. Let us start our Sunday celebration service by joining together in song. We're going to stand up. And we silently give thanks for Joan and her beautiful words that led us into the heart space. We remain there with the willingness to go even deeper into the heart, into the idea of the absolute, as we listen to the words of our sacred reading.
An excerpt from Spiritual Economics by Eric Butterworth. The word substance comes from the Latin substare, which means stand under. There is substance standing under everything. We're not referring to the component parts that make up the thing, but to the non-material essence at the root of it. In the universal realm in which you live and have being, the whole of good is present at every point in space at the same time. Good doesn't come and go. The universe doesn't capriciously move substance from the supply up there to fill your need down here. The whole of good substance is ever present, as a prospering presence. There is no place in all the universe where substance is any more present or any less present than right where you are. Faith is the spiritual capacity by which we make form and shape this ever-present basic element of spirit substance. We can have faith in abundance or faith in the appearance of lack. So turn from the appearance of lack to the reality of abundance. From this place declare, I establish myself in the limitless substance of God, and I am abundance. And so it is.
And so it is. And so with that bold knowing that the limitless substance of love, that the limitless substance of the absolute is right here where we are, let us remember that and bring it into our hearts even deeper with this song that we're singing, I am remembering who I am. Knowing that as we remember for ourselves the truth about our existence, we remember the truth of all existence, and we bless all beings everywhere. I am remembering. I am remembering. In the beauty of this remembrance, we know the truth about all existence and the truth about ourselves. That the I am presence lives and moves and has its eternal substance within us always. And so let us breathe into that knowing and then exhale, opening our eyes in love with what is as it is. And so it is.
Now and then, it's amazing how the earth can shift beneath my feet, leaving me shaking where I stand. Then again, call it crazy if I take a deep breath and release. I feel a higher plan every time I reach out or let go. I get a new chance to understand that behind the night there is plenty of light. Everything is all right, and I know it. Let your dreams ignite. You were given a light, not to hide in the dark, but to show it. There's not enough love or money, contentment, happiness, or time. But I know the problem isn't real. Comprehend, do you get it? A making of your own design. What you think shows in what you feel. Let us claim the true power inside us that darkness can never conceal. For behind the night there is plenty of light. Everything is alright and I know it. Let your dreams ignite. You've been given a light, not to hide in the dark, but to show it. Let your brilliance unfold before humanity. May you blossom for all mankind. Pave the path of intent with your clarity, one with creation, and soon you will find that behind the night there is plenty of light. Everything is alright and I know it. Let your dreams ignite. You've been given a light, not to hide in the dark, but to show it. Show it. Show it.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. It's great to see you this morning. Let me get myself organized here. Okay. So, again, you may be wondering why I'm wearing a blanket, for one thing, and also why there are blankets all over the altar. And we're in the midst of this process. It's actually going to be lasting all year, but we're highlighting it right now in that we are looking out to serve our brothers and sisters who don't have homes, including the people that come and walk around the property here sometimes. We're giving them blankets if they don't have a place to sleep and if they need to stay warm when it's cold. And Step Up Ventura, which is a daycare center for children whose parents don't have homes. We're doing a collection for various items that these two organizations will need, as well as doing certain other things to assist homeless in our town, feeding at Family to Family, which is a food program, and other things. We're going to be looking at serving homeless pets for a while too. All kinds of great stuff. So my plan is to feature some of the items that we're collecting, and you can find out more about that in Stanley's Hall after the service. There's an outreach table, and you can find out what we're collecting, and we hope you donate to it because it's really fun. Anyway, during the weeks that we're highlighting this up until Easter, I'm hoping to do a sermon that features one of the items that we're collecting. 2 weeks ago, I did one on Vicks Vapor Rub. I learned a lot from talking about Vicks, but that's, buy the CD or listen online if you want to hear what that was. And today I'm speaking about a blanket of goodwill, which is why I'm wearing a blanket of goodwill. And goodwill it's a word that you don't hear that often unless you're talking about the thrift store, but goodwill really is benevolence or kindness. And I love it that it has the word will in it because it helps us see that there's some type of intentionality connected with goodwill, that we actually have to make an intentional effort at times to be kind or to spread the good or to be the presence of benevolence in the world. And then the blanket of goodwill, to me, is a metaphor for absolute reality. That in this teaching we teach that there is an absolute reality that is beyond opposites, that contains all opposites, and this absolute reality is ultimately love or good. And the truth is that we can be wrapped in this blanket of goodwill, and we always are wrapped in this blanket of goodwill, and this blanket of goodwill is within us as well, as it said in the reading, that there is substare, that there is God or love or absolute reality is actually substance, right? Spirit became matter so that matter could become spirit, that is within us too. It's just that we don't always know it. So the message today is about to help us reconnect with that blanket of goodwill that is always available for us, that we can be enfolded in this goodwill, that we can be infused by this goodwill, and most importantly, that we can share this blanket of goodwill with others. Is there anybody here that's cold at the moment that would like to wear my blanket? Here. I'm going to give it to Miss Dodd. Here you go. Feel free to put it on. And then when you're done with it, you can either keep it or you can give it to the thing up there. Okay? All right. That's actually a blanket that was given to me when we did a youth fundraiser. It has an inspiring affirmation on it. And I've enjoyed it for years, but I really like it that it might go to somebody that doesn't have a home, that's going to be walking around with an inspirational affirmation about inspiration. And that's how the blanket of goodwill works, but we'll get to that in a moment. Okay, so one of the ways to embody and become the blanket of goodwill starts with expressing goodwill towards yourself. Certainly in this spiritual center, we talk a lot about how wonderful we are, and we affirm how wonderful we are and how we're one with God, and that there is this power and this presence that lives and moves and has its perfect being through us, and that we are the light of the world, and that we are glorious and magnificent. And we are, and sometimes we're not. Well, we always are, but we don't always know that we are because we're engaging in behaviors that are pleasing to the ego. Anyone ever engage in behaviors that are pleasing to the ego? Okay. Now, in old metaphysics, we used to try and slap all that into submission, and we would just push it away and try not to look at it and deny it and say, no, you don't belong here in the kingdom of heaven. In new metaphysics, particularly in this church, I don't know if the other guys do this, but I do it. In new metaphysics, we say, oh my goodness, everything is welcome in the kingdom of heaven. In fact, the flaw is the gift. The flaw is the gift. And so we welcome and embrace even the things that we think are flawed about us. I want to give you an example of that. How I embrace the gift of lying. A lot of people are opposed to lying, as am I. I remember, I didn't warn you I was going to tell this story, but it's about you. And this is the truth. Yeah, this is the truth. When Hugh was studying spirituality with John Bennett, who was a Gurdjieff scholar in England many years ago, decades ago, when he was just a young thing, as opposed to now. No. Anyway, he said to his teacher, Mr. Bennett, he came up all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, well, Mr. Bennett, at least I no longer lie to myself. That's not even the good part. Mr. Bennett had a great answer. He said, oh, Hugh, if only that were true. Yes. If you think you never lie, you may have a very narrow definition of lying, first of all, or you may be lying to yourself. I got caught in a lie the other day by Hugh, by my husband. So let me back up a little bit. When I was in India, we were doing all kinds of humanitarian things, and the last day I was there, we went to the slums. We were there several times, but the last day we were back in the slums. And have you heard of the movie called Finding Nemo? Right? Well, my little movie that I'm going to tell you about is called Fooling Nemo, okay? Because we were there with Nemo Patel, who is a fairly well-known Indian rapper who gave it all up to help children in the slums and elsewhere, and to start giving away all kinds of stuff for free. In fact, some of you know Daniel Namad, and he has a couple of albums with Daniel Namad, and I'm hoping to bring him here someday. But anyway, that's a whole other story. Fooling Nemo. So it was my last day in India, and I hadn't really shopped yet. I wanted to get some incredible Indian clothes to bring back, such as this. bright colors and, little gewgaws on them that you don't really get in the States. So I asked Nemo, if I were to go to shop, where should I go? And he said, well, there's this place called Fab India, and I'm like, well, I want to go to the slums too. He's like, well, you come to the slums with us, and then partway through it, we'll stick you in a rickshaw, and you can go to Fab India. So we went to the slums, and we went to Gandhi's ashram, and then we went back to the slums. And every now and then I would say to Nemo, are you remembering about Fab India? And he'd be like, oh, yeah, there's time. Well, I was starting to get concerned that I would not have time to do my shopping. So, and this is really unfortunate. This is a little more embarrassing than I thought it would be. So, so we went to this place in the slums where this woman, she was about 80, and Nemo told us her story. And she had a house, a small house in the slums, but she gave it up so that the children could have a school there. And all she had really was a bed on the patio, a bed made out of rope and sticks lashed together. And this was her whole life. She lived her life from this bed, but she did it so that the children could have her house to go to school. And I said, yeah, that's beautiful, but all that aside, what about Fab India? Mortifying. I said that to myself. To Nemo, I said, it's getting late. I really think I should go to Fab India because I have to get gifts for the people at my church that have been holding down the fort. I told this story to Hugh, and he said, so you lied. And I did get gifts for them. No, you spun it. You spun it. You lied. You lied. And I did not lie. Oh, yeah, I guess I did. So, and then I got to look at why I lied, and I spun the truth. Is it really? Yeah, it's a lie, whatever. I'll just call it what it is. I still can't admit it. I lied. Because I didn't want Nemo to think I was shallow. Is this striking a chord with anybody? And that's in Hugh's class that he's teaching. Part of the thing is acting is lying, is that we're all very familiar with acting because we do it all the time, right? We spin our story a little bit to help us look better or to gain approval or to try and control something or to try and manipulate something. We're constantly in this state, and we have to orient ourselves back to the place where we're really telling the truth within ourselves, if we possibly can. It's probably something we'll always have a tendency to do, but the more and more we can bring ourselves back to telling the truth, here's a miracle that happens. As soon as I acknowledged that I was lying to prevent Nemo from thinking I was shallow, all of a sudden my shallowness turned into depth. Isn't that cool? Because I started thinking about, I started asking myself, why was it important for you for Nemo to have this good opinion of you? And it's like, well, that's the human condition, is that we want people to think well of us all the time. So we're always kind of curving the situation to make that happen. But what would happen if you were just shallow? Is there something wrong with shallow? I mean, you're very deep sometimes, but can you be shallow too? Can you accept that forsaken part of yourself? Yeah, I think I can. So you see, what happens is that when we go into denial about the dark parts of ourselves, we are shallow about being shallow. We are guilty about being guilty. We are ashamed of being ashamed. We are angry about being angry. We are angry at ourselves for being angry. We are unforgiving of our unforgiveness. And once we shine the light on that, we become that blanket of goodwill. That blanket of goodwill descends both around us and within us to bring forth a new vision of the truth of who we really are, that we are that blanket of goodwill, that we are one with the absolute reality known as love, that we are the power and the presence of the Most High and the Most Low that is weaving itself together beautifully to unfold as life. The beautiful thing about that, which is the second thing I want to talk about, is that as we recognize that we are that humble blanket of goodwill, we recognize that we are also just a humble thread in the blanket of goodwill, and that our threads have threads. All of the thoughts that we have and all of the activities and affairs that we have, all of those are just mere threads in the blanket of goodwill. But it is in our humility that we recognize that we are great. How's that for a paradox? And it is true greatness that recognizes that we are humble. And the truth about the blanket of goodwill and being a mere thread in the blanket of goodwill is that as we start to recognize that we are just a thread in that beautiful blanket of goodwill, or that beautiful blanket of goodwill that we have up here, or any blanket, the metaphorical blanket of goodwill, as we realize that we are a mere thread, we start to notice the interconnections that are woven into the fabric of reality, and that really opens our heart. You know, if anything is making me fluent in the language of the absolute, it is this idea that we are all in this together, and we are all participating and serving visibly and invisibly. You know, when you learn about fluency, when you learn a foreign language, you're not quite fluent. You still have to think about it. You're not really thinking in that language, right? When I used to speak Italian, there were certain things certain moments where I would have fluency and I would know what I was saying. And now there's only a few sentences like, ho studiato molti anni fa, molti anni fa, no dimenticato molto. I studied many years ago and I don't remember anything because I have to say that a lot. But the same is true with spiritual language, with the language of the absolute. It seems like a foreign language to us, but as we start embodying it and putting it into action and looking for it everywhere, then we get that fluency. And that fluency is what I want for myself and what I want for all of us, is that we become fluent in the language of absolute love so that we are a beacon of absolute love for our community. And we can do it. We can totally do it. I know we can do it. Does anybody here doubt that we can do that? Okay, good. Please stand up so that we may shun you and turn our backs on you. Okay, I didn't mean that. That was a joke. So about this business about being a thread, a mere thread in the blanket of goodwill and knowing that our threads have threads and how that leads to fluency, I'm going to tell you about an experience that we had in the center this week. And the challenging part about this piece is that there are so many all the time, so it was hard to choose one. But I'm going to talk about one of our activities here that we have, which is the Grief Support Group, which is led by the beautiful Reverend Judy Pando. And it was led by Dot, who put her heart and her soul into it for many years. And Dina Sherry, I don't know if Dina's here. Hi, Dina. Yeah, Dina. And so the leaders of the Grief Support Group contacted me and said, you know, we're not sure if we should continue this. Attendance has been a little bit low lately, and is there really a need for it in this congregation? And rather than react like, you know, we're so prone to do, oh, something's not working, I must be doing something wrong, right? Anybody do that, right? You know, there should be tons of people with grief here. What's wrong with us? It's crazy, right? We're so crazy. Rather than reacting that way, we all three just decided to meditate on it. And so we did. Now, in between that decision to meditate on the future of the Grief Support Group, I was starting to have meditations on another topic, which is the building of a young adults ministry here. It's funny, you know, I go to the convention, at least part of it every year, and there's a moment. They do this every single year, and every single year everybody panics. Okay? There's a moment in the convention where they say, well, all the people, we're not going to do it here, okay? There's a moment in the convention when they say, well, all the people under 40 stand up. And there's a room of 300 ministers and like 4 people stand up, right? And everybody's like, oh my God, what is the future of this teaching? And then it's like, go and build your youth and family ministries, go and build your young people's ministries. And I'm like, I am not going to build a youth and family ministry or a young person's ministry from that place of scarcity and fear. I can't do it. How does this sound? Hi, 20-something-year-old. Like, we're really ancient in this church. And, you know, pretty soon we're going to, you know. And we would really appreciate it if you would come and carry on the teaching for us. Now, is that attractive or unattractive? The answer to that is yes. Did I hear a yes over there? Yes, it is both attractive and unattractive. The problem is that it attracts that which we do not want. Desperation attracts desperate people, okay? In terms of our vision statement, is our vision statement, we are a center of decrepit fossils. No, it is not. It is, we are a center of love, where we aspire to be love, serve love, share love. And isn't that a lot more attractive of what we want than we are a center of decrepit fossils? Come on down, everybody. like, get me a walker, come on down. And I do not mean to be politically incorrect about people with walkers or elderly people. Please take my, what's that called? Apology, waiver, whatever it is, yeah. Anyway, so this is going on in my head, this thing about creating a place where young people feel especially welcome, as well as where people that are older feel especially welcome. Note to self, stop calling them fossils. So creating that environment. And I was meditating on the grief group and thinking, okay, what happens sometimes in the center is that when a ministry falls apart, or falls away rather, it didn't fall apart, but when it starts to fall away and starts to evolve into something different, it's often making space for something new to come in. So maybe that is happening with the grief group. So I came out of my meditation and said, okay, maybe this is the opening that we need to create a place for greater youth presence in our center. And that same day, an hour after I came out of my meditation, Reverend Judy emailed me and she said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to shorten it to an hour. We're going to meet. We're going to continue to meet. And if there's nobody there in grief, we're going to hold space for world tragedies. Isn't that beautiful? And isn't that something that a group of young people, not that they necessarily have to go to the grief group, but that consciousness of holding space for world tragedies is such a beautiful thing, because I think that's part of the challenge with bringing young folks into the center, is that they really want to feel like they're making a difference in this world that they are going to inherit someday. So can we open that space in our hearts to know that we are a center that not only addresses things physically, as Judy Pando so wisely said, but we address them from a spiritual level too, which is where the change really happens. You know, there's this beautiful energy of kindness that is growing, that we're stirring, and that we're bringing forth in visible and invisible ways. And so what if we are that place of reconciliation? I'm always talking about the third force these days. What if we are that place of reconciliation that can hold the opposites of this tragedy happening over here and the desire for peace, and sitting in that place, in that dynamic tension, and then seeing what resolves? You know, I have nothing against the Me Too movement. I have great compassion for the people that have suffered at the effect of sexual misconduct. But I'm really thinking that maybe the way to go is for us to start a We Three movement. We Three, thank you. The We Three is willingness to look at both sides of a different situation and recognize that there is reconciliation, and that there are not win-lose situations, but there are situations where we win and we win and we win and we win until we create peace on earth. Peace in the earth starts with peace in the heart. So I don't know how to do #We3. I don't know if I'm really going to do it, but but that is my intention, and I hope it's our shared intention for bringing new people in here, bringing young people in here, bringing elderly people in here, whatever it is that we are a place of reconciliation, that we are a place of love, and that is how the blanket of goodwill expresses through us. Because if my goodwill creates a lose for you, it's not goodwill. We have to continue to work to create win-wins whenever possible. Whenever possible. And sometimes it may not be possible, and then we embrace that too. Okay? The point of this thing about what happened with Reverend Judy and the grief group and youth and family and young adult ministry and all of that is invisible stuff going on behind the scenes that you may not notice unless you are privy to this type of information. And what I'm calling forth for the congregation, in order to embody this blanket of goodwill, in order to be this blanket of goodwill and to have it wrap itself around you and infuse itself through you, is to start noticing, to start bearing witness to the invisible acts of service or the visible acts of service that you see around you. Start noticing and seeing, wow, that person did that and that made a difference. That person did this thing over here and that made a difference. Whatever it is, just start to notice it and start to tell the people about it too, because that really anchors it. That really anchors it. And if we could create that level of goodwill in this center, our light would grow and grow and grow and grow and show, and we truly will be that beacon of goodness here in beautiful Ventura County. The other thing about this experience that I had with young adult ministry and Reverend Judy and the grief group is this growing notion that I have that I'm not sure that the past and the future and the present are separate. I feel like I'm about to get very weird. You know, you always think that the past shapes the future. What if the future is also shaping the past? Albert Einstein said that time is an illusion and that time exists just so we can keep everything from happening at once. We can keep it straight in our heads. We can work with what's happening. But what if everything is really happening at once? What if the past is shaping the future, but the future is also calling to the past and calling forth certain intentions in the past? You know, really, really ridiculous, simple example of this is I've shared with you that I'm going to North Carolina in 3 weeks. And when I told my friend that I was going to hear a friend sing in an opera, when I told her I was going to come and hear her, she's from North Carolina, and she wrote to me and she said, well, slap me silly and call me George. And since then, I have to tell you that the future North Carolina is calling to me, and my language is changing. The other day I said to Hugh, where's it at? And then he said to me a couple days later, influence, he said, where's that at on the TV, right? You were looking for something. Where's it at? Where's it at, all y'all? You hear a really weird one that I said to my dogs? What you know good? You know what that means? Anybody from the South here know what that means? What? I don't want to hear it, whatever it was. It means what's new. What you know good? K-N-O-W, what you know good, right? Anyway, so that seems like the future calling to the past and the past shaping the future, all of that. But the other thing was going to India and having this ridiculous situation with my dog the first time I went and wondering, why is my dog dying the day I'm getting on the plane to India? And then taking this second trip and realizing, oh, that's what happened. The dog getting sick right before I left for India really opened me up to absolute reality so that I could embrace this experience of India over here 5 years later, right? But did that cause this, or did this cause that? It's becoming clearer and clearer to me that the ripples are flowing both ways, that the ripples are flowing from the past to the future and from the future to the past. And so what does this mean other than just a weird mental exercise to confuse all of us? I think it means that there is greatness that is calling us. There is greatness that is calling us. There is greatness in the future that is reaching into the present, that is summoning you into a way of being in the world to call forth that greatness. That is how the two interact. And it's a beautiful, magnificent thing when you are feeling confused, when you are feeling pain, when you are feeling in despair, when you are feeling anything, to just step back and say, wait a minute, maybe this is part of grace and greatness calling me. Maybe this is part of humble greatness calling me. And maybe I can shift my consciousness just a little bit to see what the future wants of me. And then make a wise choice from that place and step forward into a momentary appreciation of who you really are. That blanket of goodwill, because the blanket of goodwill is not limited to this time and space reality, is it? That blanket of goodwill is eternal and omnipresent. It stretches and faces and embraces and infuses everyone. So this is your life, folks. This is your life. And I'm so excited that this is your life, because if this is your life, then it gets to be my life, and then it gets to be the world's life, and it gets to be everybody's life, and that is a beautiful and a wonderful place to be. And I know that difficult things are happening in the world. I know that we are in a just a weird situation in this country, and that there is things going on in other countries that are so difficult and so hard to reconcile. But let us open up to the possibility that the future is creating the past and that the past is creating the future, and just show up in the present moment with all of that fullness and all of that awareness, and simply recognize that it is grace and paradox and goodwill and joy and absolute reality expressing in all of it. That will change us. That will open us. That will cause us to be fluent in the language of the absolute. That will help us be that center of love that we already are. And then to illustrate these principles, no pressure there, I'd like to call up one of our congregants, because again, this is the point, is that people are serving this center and serving the work of love in visible and invisible ways. So we're making Shelley's service to herself and to our center visible by having her come up and speak to us for just a moment. I'm not very good at it, okay? Thank you. Sure.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. So I'm taking Reverend Bonnie's class right now, Spiritual Economics, along with a lot of you that I see here today. And I want to share with you this morning an experience that I had doing this work that really helped shift my consciousness. See, several years ago, before I moved here, my husband and I lived in Orange County, and we went through a devastating financial crisis. We owned a printing business that was not recession-proof, and we ended up losing our company, we ended up losing our home, and it was truly devastating, just devastating. And I didn't know what to do. And I tried to put together a plan to fix things. And the first thing I decided on that success plan was to play the lottery. Maybe some of you have tried that. I don't know if you were successful, it didn't work for me. But the next thing I decided to do was to try and start studying about abundance and prosperity. And I would read things and hear things that would say, there's no such thing as lack, only an appearance. And at the time, to be honest, it kind of pissed me off. Because I was like, sorry.
No, it's okay.
I was like, really? Okay. Do you want to take a look?
That's God calling. Just to tell you that you shouldn't say pissed off in church, okay?
Sorry, God, I apologize for using profanity in church.
I know it's okay, please. like it's never been done before, right? Yeah. Go ahead, sorry to interrupt.
No, it's okay. So I was like, there's no lack, really? Do you want to take a look at my bank balance and tell me that again? And then I would hear, you have to feel abundant. And I would think, how do you feel abundant when you can't even put gas in your car? And none of this made sense to me. So I just pushed it aside, and I continued to focus on my dismal financial state, which continued to get worse and worse for way too long. And one day, after I had bought my lotto ticket, and I was sitting in my car, I had this incredible spiritual experience. I heard within this voice come and say, Shelley, can't you see? You already won. What are you trying? You already won. You won the lottery. I was like, what? You won the lottery. You won the love lottery, and you don't even know it. Look at your husband. Look at your beautiful children. What are you missing? You won. You won the love lottery. It's way better than any lottery you could ever win. I was like, yeah, that's true. But the Powerball is $300 million this year. No. So I believed that. In that space, I started to shift, and I started to open, and I started to focus on what I had. And that started creating more goodness in my life. And at that time, we moved up here to Oxnard, and I started coming to VCSL. And I started taking classes, and I continued to learn these things and started focusing on all the goodness in my life instead of counting the dollars in my bank account. And slowly but surely, I started to feel abundant. And as I began to feel abundant, I started attracting abundance. And so when I saw that Reverend Bonnie was doing this class, Spiritual Economics, I was so excited because I thought, yes, I'm ready. I'm ready to study this now. And so through this work, I've just been devouring it, and I'm loving it. And I started reading things like, God is the allness of ever-present substance in which I live and breathe and have my being. And I'm like, yes, I believe that. God is a ceaseless flow of substance. Yeah, I believe that. I establish myself in the limitless substance of God, and I have abundance. yes, I believe that. And I just started affirming this and just believing it and believing it. And last week, I woke up one morning and I just felt different. I couldn't describe it. I just felt different, felt very emotional. And I went downstairs and I made my coffee and I just started crying. I didn't know why, but just crying. I didn't try to figure out why, I just let myself cry. And I went to do my morning stretches on my yoga mat and I laid there just sobbing, crying. And finally I had this knowing, this realization where I felt that I was no longer believing that God was in me, but I was knowing it. And in that knowing, I felt so blessed and so much love and so humbled that there was nothing else I could do but cry. And I continued to cry. And I shared that with Bonnie, and she asked me to come share it with you here today. And what's amazing to me is I look at it and I think, wow, I really have made a big shift. And it didn't happen overnight. You know, it took years. It really did take years. But I went from believing that there was lack and seeing lack to knowing that God is the instant, constant abundance in the universe. And that was a really big shift. And knowing that through that consciousness, that seeing through that consciousness, indeed anything is possible. And so I would like you to affirm with me today, God is my instant, constant, and abundant source of supply.
God is my instant, constant, and abundant source of supply.
And so it is.
And so it is. Yay, Kelly. That's beautiful. Thank you. So that's what I'm talking about, folks. That is the blanket of goodwill in action, a thread in the blanket of goodwill with her own threads. She is the humble, abundant source of God, and the same is true for all of us, right? Yes. Let's know that. Yes. Let's know that. Let's click our fingers instead of applauding. And let us pray. And so I turn within just in a place of joy and celebration for the beauty of this community and for the beauty of the hope and the wonder and the love that shows up here all the time, every Sunday. I also speak a word of appreciation for our growing fluency, for our growing ability to be able to see it and know it and trust it as the truth. That truly we are engaged, infused, enfolded in an abundant substance that is our constant, instant, and beautiful source of supply. The fullness of Spirit is right here where we are. And as we know this for ourselves, we can know this for all beings. And we send this healing wave of perception, a healing wave of energy that aligns us with the absolute, that aligns others with the absolute. We send that around the world to embrace all beings everywhere. And so I know that lives here today have been healed and transformed and uplifted. I know that we have greater patience and kindness for the things that we once called flaws. I know that we recognize that there is invisible service all around it, and we get skilled at bearing witness to it and sharing it and growing that goodwill within us as we do. And I know also that we have a new relationship with past, present, and future, that we know that it is all one and that it calls to us and beckons us to the greatness and the humility that we are, to the love that we are, to the God presence absolute that we are. And so I'm just so grateful to be able to speak these words and to be in the blessedness of this beautiful center with everybody here today. We bless all teachings as we bless all paths to God, churches, synagogues, temples, mosques, ashrams. And we bless all of the beauty that has evolved through our spiritual work together in this day as we recognize that we are so blessed. And together we release these words into the divine mystery and we say, and so it is. I am so...
You taught me so much today, though you never said a word. Your silence spoke volumes, you'd be amazed the things I heard. Conversations with myself can dig a hole inside of me. When I'm looking to you to be anything other than you'd be, and I ask myself, what did I learn today? And what did I teach? Try to figure out, what did I give and what did I preach? Was it love? Was it love? Was it love? Was it love? Love for myself to let that voice inside retreat. And love for my teachers who don't even know the lessons that they teach. Love for everyone I meet and everything I do today. Love for the gifts they bring and the gifts they take away. And I ask myself, what did I learn today? And what did I teach? Try to figure out, what did I give and what did I preach? Was it love? Was it love? Was it love? Was it love? Let this be my prayer, what I truly hope I find when I fade into the oneness, that the gift I left behind, it was love. Let it be love. Can you feel it coming to you? Love, let it be love. Believe